extra crazy hair. I love it, extra crazy hair. I just have it on top of my head today because yesterday was over 100 here. And I'm thinking today is likely going to be something similar. So if it's super hot, the hair goes on the head. I won't wear it down. It's just too much. In fact, it was kind of crazy when I got to look at my temperatures. When I had people here recently, they ran their AC like nobody's business in the rooms. And they hadn't seen me with my hair down for the last night. And they were like, "Oh, your hair is lovely." Say, "Well, thank you, but I don't usually wear it down. It's too hot these days." So I'm here. I feel better. The antibiotic shots are actually working. We'll see how well they work and for how long. So I've had some crazy, I wish the bruises would show up. The bruises and the abscesses. I've got the inside of my arms are torn up, but I'm here. The tsunami may or may not begin. He's looking into it. He's checking into what it needs to happen. If we could just drag our ass here and sue her here, it would be so much better because the laws here on things like plagiarism and on defamation are extremely strong. What she does there, if you did here, you'd get in a whole world of trouble. You get very sued. But to sue somebody from the States to hear for that, it's $100,000 just to get somebody to buy off a judge to get a ruling to have it seen here. So it's problematic either way, but he's looking into it. I am going back to the States in June. I may be having meetings with legal representatives at that time. And so this is not a period, it's more of a comma in what will happen or what can happen. I really don't want to sue her. I don't want it to be a tsunami. Why? Because number one, she has assets of no value. She has a house and that's about it. I think that would probably be protected. Well, I don't know. I'd have to look into what the state laws of Minnesota are. Everybody else and their brother is suing her. So even if there's anything left, it won't be much. I mostly would like to see her lose her channel. And if Todd Chrisley accomplishes that, more power to him. So that's my last word on her for quite some time, I hope. I hate talking about her. I feel like afterwards, like I should go take a hot shower with a scrub brush and some of this harsh chemical we used to use in stained glass. You're scrubbing the flux. You got your steel wool brush and you're scrubbing hard, trying to get all the chemicals you have to use to get the stuff to stick together and all that. I feel like scrubbing. Oh, you can keep Toad. Toad has ruined cupcakes for me for all time and eternity. These wonderful cupcakes we have here that are exactly like Hostess, but better. They look identical, and Bimbo makes them. They're really good. Pinguinos. So I was originally going to come back talking about the craziest story for Costa Rica, but I may keep that till tomorrow. I tried to float it on somebody else's channel when they were all laughing about sex and weird stories and stuff, and it went over like a lead balloon. So that tells me I probably need to keep it on my channel. So I'm going to talk about this tomorrow, but I really want your input. Would you like to talk about this or not? There's a guy who came to Costa Rica from Great Britain for work or investments. I'm not really sure which one. He had some type of surgery on his junk. He went swimming in the ocean here and he developed flesh-eating bacteria. That's not so funny. What's funny is the coverage in the UK. And I need to talk also tomorrow about why you don't do that. I need to talk about the pollution in the oceans worldwide. This is why you don't go into the water with an open cutter sore. One time I was talking to my doctor here about it, and he said, if you were to do that, walk in there with open wounds, I would have to put you on 3 different antibiotics just to make sure you didn't get the creeping, crawling crud that eats everything. So there's that. you think it's in bad taste, let me know. I occasionally will go bad taste because I laugh over the stupidest things. John Wayne Bobbitt, yeah, that's another one. When that happened, my father called me up. Was always the jokester. He was a clown part time, but he was always the jokester. He was laughing so hard he could get like one word out. Cut his dick off. And the thing is, we had just not long before, maybe less than a year, had moved from Manassas, Virginia, out to our little enclave past Warrenton, Virginia, in Culpeper. We had just moved from Manassas, not far from there. Hey, Silver Goddess, and hey, everybody else that I've neglected to to acknowledge. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place, but I'm feeling so much better. I can't believe it. I'm not sweating my ass off, so that's a huge thing. So when that happened, my father was just having a fit about it. Cutting off the peen happens a lot in China. They nickname it ducks. Oh my goodness. I told my father when all this happened, I said, if I had done that, they wouldn't have found it on the street corner. And the thing is, I lived in Manassas, so I knew where their apartment was. I knew where she tossed the dick, the whole 9 yards. And I'm amazed that Prince William County Hospital managed to put it on right. That blows my mind because it's not really what you'd call a more major place. I was really shocked that he didn't send him to some place like Inova or George Washington University Hospital, something a little more up the ranks of expertise in Prince William County Hospital. Double digits a year. Wow, that's crazy. So I told my husband and my father, I said, if I did that, they would never find it. I would feed it to something or someone. That's the kind of petty I roll when somebody does me that kind of dirty. My ex made a lucky escape. He should be happy that I ran away from him because later in life I decided that it was worth it. I saw that Java man, and you know who's also part of Novat? And sometimes is part of UVA, and sometimes they're running off being part of Inova. Culpeper County Hospital. Well, I don't know what they call it now. Which was I used to always say that Culpeper County Hospital was good if you broke a bone and you need stitches, but if you had anything complex, you really need to go down the road to either UVA or Inova, one of those. And I still stand by that. I've had some interesting experiences at Culpeper Hospital, even though I'm going to give them props. When I had my hysterectomy, it was the best thing ever. They didn't have room for me in the surgical ward, so they put me in the hysterectomy. They put me in the maternity ward. I was the only patient for 2 full days. And it was wonderful. The best thing I ever did. So that goes to my main thing I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about leaving a high demand religious organization. I need to set the stage and talk about this a little more detail than I have. I started writing about it, and I've had to sit and think about why my pastor might have acted like he did and what he was trying to accomplish by some of the stuff that he did, because I've had to start looking at that from his view too. So the last year or so, 18 months before we left, I had a number of bad things happen. I had my 9th miscarriage. We were trying to have another child because UVA had already told us that we could have another child and bank the cord blood. It might be useful if my daughter came down with ITP again. So we were trying to do that. It didn't work. I had a really bad miscarriage down in Louisiana on Christmas Day. You can imagine that. And I never really recovered. Every month, my red blood cell count would go down lower and lower until finally my gyno was like, look, I know you want to have another child, but you need to do something here. We need to do this. Because the church was involved with Bethel Redding, and the healing theology, when I started having these problems and I started asking for prayer, I started being told that I could not consider hysterectomy. that to have a hysterectomy would be to completely ignore God's plan for me and take the glory away from God, where God would heal me and I would be completely restored and have children. Well, I was in my 40s by that time, and I had dealt with problems with that part of my body since I was a teenager. So I basically said, no, I'm having the surgery. So I was besieged and harassed by people that I thought were my beloved brothers and sisters about this. And it was the first little crumbling of my saying, maybe this kind of sucks. Maybe this is not the right thing at all that we should be doing. Not the hysterectomy, but that church. And that had started also a couple of years before I had my first little thread pulled out when they did Neil T. Anderson's The Bondage Breakers, and they were trying to make me repent from having done yoga. Because I guess they think you're chanting demon names. I was blown away because I'd done Lilia's yoga and me for years and never once chanted demon names. In fact, at the front of her book, she credits her Lord Jesus Christ. So I had some experiences where I knew that yoga was a way to go for the injuries I had. So that was the first little thread. The second thread, which was a bigger one, was the hysterectomy. They started harassing me pretty much. I'd already had my arm twisted to throw away all my asthma meds, my nebulizer, my CPAP machine, and trust that I would be healed and deny having symptoms. And that hadn't worked out real well. And Jesus likes to start his day with yoga. Hey, whatever works, whatever works. And that's how it was for me. I knew for a fact that one of the surgeries I'd had, waking up from the surgery, I was prompted to do certain very gentle yoga moves to get back to normal, and it helped a lot. That's where we are. I've had a hysterectomy. I've been opposed by everybody up there who's been giving me crap about my health for forever and told me I was glorifying the devil by admitting that I had health issues. And the people tried to make me repent from yoga. So my husband started going back and forth between the Methodist church and our church. He would go for the early Methodist church service, the 8 a.m. service, and then he would join me later at, I've got a name that I named my church in my book. It's called Possum Creek Church. It's not the exact name, but it's actually pretty damn close. So I was going to Possum Creek, and I was still pretty sold out. I was on worship team. That would be interesting, Java, for her to claim that she had a hysterectomy. I don't know. Silver, it's not just the weak-minded. I've always considered myself pretty strong-minded, and they gulled me. They got me into it. Even though there were so many things like the yoga, I'm just sitting there going, yeah, I know that's not true. They're just a little deceived about that. I'm just not going to say anything. So they had me pretty shut up. I didn't say a lot. And I was on worship team then too, pretty hard. I'd been on for years, sold out. I was one of the 5%ers. 5%ers of the people at church do everything. They show up and wash the dishes from the dinner. They show up and cook this, do that, make the brochures and fold them, the little handouts, make sure the books get ordered, all kinds of different things. I did a ton of stuff up there. That's true. Obi-Wan Kenobi did say that. So anyway, long story short, there I was, my last Sunday there, and I didn't even know it was my last Sunday. I'd already had long conversations with the pastor about my husband going to the Methodist church in the morning and then our church later. People were starting to ask me about it. It had been noticeable that he'd been coming in late for like 8 weeks. And I just said, I don't know what that's about. You need to ask him if you have questions. even though I did have an inkling what it was about, but it wasn't really my story to tell. He was having some pretty bad internal dissonance between what they were doing and saying and some of the crazy that was going down. It kind of is an opiate, and you get used to it. So I had been having these long conversations with my pastor, and I told him, I'm nervous about this because you have people like I'm going to call Ben Lon Barry, because they always wore Ben Lon pants and a one of those polo shirts. I never saw him wearing anything else. And he was something of a gossip, a prayer gossiper. And he had been bedeviling me before and telling my husband to make me behave in various things. So Ben Lon Barry was not one of my favorites. And I actually had a conversation with the pastor where I said, what happens when Ben Lon Barry starts running his mouth and about all this? And he said, don't worry about it. I'll handle Ben Lon Barry. You just do you. You and the kids stay here, and you let your husband go off to the evil homosexual abortionist Methodist church. So that was all settled. That last Sunday, I was up on the platform. I'd come in early with the kids. I was practicing worship. We were doing our hour-long worship team rehearsal. We run through everything, make sure everybody knows their parts, who's singing alto, who's singing soprano, who's playing what, all of that. And earlier that day, I had spoken to the pastor as I came in. He said, I don't think that you should be hosting Wednesday night Bible study any longer because your husband is not on board. And he required that there be a husband and wife combo for each Wednesday night Bible study. Well, I was happy with that because Ben Lon Barry made my life hell during Wednesday night Bible study. And what do I mean by that? I mean, he did stuff like one time somebody brought their 19-year-old pregnant out of wedlock daughter with them. She was 8 months pregnant, and all of us welcomed her, and nobody said anything nasty to her except for Ben Lon Barry. He got her in the kitchen and started telling her what a disgrace she was and how her parading her shameless, illegal, illegitimate bundle of whatever was ruining the faith of everybody and setting a terrible example for the young girls of the church. It is a mouthful, but the church name is even longer, the real church name. Longer and stranger. Let me just put that out there for you. You can tell the pastor he was not going to be having an abortion. He might be embracing some of those gays, though. So Ben Lon has acted very badly. I used to say that before I hosted Wednesday night Bible study, I used to enjoy going to other people's houses. When I started hosting it, around 1 o'clock, I started getting nervous. Around 4, I'd have to pop a Xanax because I knew the potential for it going sideways with Ben Lon was high. And at the very least, he'd try to take control, and he tried a number of times, particularly the worship segment. And so I'm setting up that Ben Lon is a bad dude that I just had nothing to do with. I just didn't want anything to do with him. He was bad news. While screaming, he loved to do worship and scream, thank you, Jesus! Thank you, Jesus! Thank you, Jesus! I love you, Jesus! And then he was going out and acting like the world's biggest infected carbuncle on the rear end of Christianity. And so he told me he would handle that, but he told me also I would no longer be doing Wednesday night Bible study, the pastor I'm talking about now. And I was almost doing cartwheels down the aisle when I heard that because I was like, yes! No more Ben Lon Barry on Wednesday nights. And a few others, like the two girls that like to pretend they were playing with angels, said, we're playing with angels. So it had gotten really strange there towards the end. So I'm up in the platform. I'm singing. I wish I could even remember what the songs were we were doing. We were doing something, our usual hour full of stuff. They're blonde, blue-eyed Jesus and hate everybody else. You're right. So I can see all the way down the center aisle to the front door from where I'm at, maybe 18 inches above the floor. And I see Ben Longberry come in, and I see the pastor go to Ben Longberry and talk to him. And they're just gesturing and pointing and various things. And I'm like going, why do I have a real bad feeling about this? Ben Longberry made a beeline into the sanctuary and went around and talked to each and every person sitting in the sanctuary and told them a warped version of why the Titkameyers were no longer going to be hosting Wednesday night Bible study. He came to right behind my 14-year-old daughter and started flapping his gums at the people behind her. And she started weeping. I was on the platform singing. I could see she was just copiously, silently weeping, my 14-year-old. So we reached the end. When we reached the end of the rehearsals, I hopped off the platform in a hurry and went to my daughter, and I hauled her into the bathroom and said, what's going on? And she told me what Van Longberry had been saying. The lie he had been perpetrating about why my husband, hey, Prairie, and I were no longer going to be hosting Wednesday night Bible study. He was running around telling everybody that my husband had turned into a homosexual loving, abortion having Methodist. So my daughter is weeping and she wants to leave. I can't leave because I have a commitment. And so I send her off to children's church teen church after drying her tears and saying, look, we're going to handle this some kind of way, shape, or form. Don't worry about it. I went into the sanctuary and asked the pastor, I said, what is going on here? You said you were going to handle him, and he's out there doing this. And the pastor looks at me and says, that's your husband's job, not mine. That's your husband's job to confront Barry when he does these things, not mine. I was like, WTF, did you just forget the conversation we've been having the last couple of weeks? What you promised me? I didn't even attempt to haul it out of you. So I got up on the platform and I sang. And as soon as my husband came, at the very end of worship afterwards, I said, look, I got to talk to you. I hauled him outside and laid out everything that happened and said, look, I'm ready to leave. I'm ready to go with you to the crazy homosexual embracing abortionists that are the Methodist Church. That's how badly I was hurt. And Van Lon hurt me through my child. That's unforgivable to me. And I'd had problems with him and my children before. So this was kind of like the last worthless Sunday morning I was ever going to sit through ever again. At the end of the service, we went up to the pastor and said, hey, look, we've made the decision to leave. We'd like to leave the right way, in good order. We're asking you to pray over us as a family and release us like we've seen you do so many times when people leave. He refused. He said, no, no, no. He told me he wanted to talk to me alone. The next day I got an email telling me to divorce my husband and stay. And so that's clearly what he wanted. So he was throwing something of a fit the next day, threw a little bit of a fit around my husband. And so we just started to leave. But we have this wonderful guy that we went to church with named Lee, he wasn't officially a pastor there, but he held a pastorate. He'd been a pastor before. He had a degree in divinity, and I always loved Lee. He was such a gentle, sweet man. So he prayed over us and released us. He said, look, I feel really bad. I think you need to leave. You're trying to leave with decency and order, and he's not letting you. Let me go ahead and release you and send you out. Because our church also believed that in this authority, and the same stupid authority, I'm going to have to look that up. The pastor, according to him. And I'd seen him advocate divorce a couple of times, so it wasn't unheard of, even though they preached you could never divorce, not for infidelity, not for anything. But There were a couple circumstances I saw the pastor lean on somebody to get a divorce. And so he was starting to do that. And the church had already lost some members, but not a lot. So I think that he was probably panicked that we were leaving, and I was one of the 5%ers. I was doing all kinds of shit. And I mean extra stuff. Like one time he called me when they were moving and said, "Look, my wife is in the house. She's crying. She can't get the cleaning done by herself. She's freaking out. Can you go over there and help her out? And please do not tell a soul you're doing this. She would be embarrassed." So I dropped everything I was doing, and I was doing a lot of stuff that day, and went over there and I helped her clean her house. That was the sort of thing I'm talking about with the 5%ers we would do. So after his little temper tantrum, the next day he had another temper tantrum at me in email, and I just ignored it. I was just completely, totally, 100% done. Done, 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 done. Dun, 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 dun. And I went off to the Methodist church. They had just started a contemporary service. It was very much like our old service in almost every way, shape, and form. They needed a worship team. I joined immediately. Things went well as that regards go, and I had to start deconstructing from some of my crazier beliefs. I was in a church where there were a lot of people in our contemporary worship team who were worship service that were doing the exact same thing. And I was privileged to be part of something that went from 10 people the first time I attended to by the time I left, they filled the entire church, like 300 or 400 people for the contemporary worship service. So it felt good to be valued and part of something good. But it doesn't stop there. For 2 years after I left the old toxic church, I had members come up to me on the street and attack me and say awful things. I heard crazy rumors about myself. One day, as you know, I have crazy medical problems. So one day I had an allergic reaction to something I ate and my lips swelled up. But I had to go to the post office and get some stuff done. So it's like throw in a ton of Benadryl and go on, because it was just the lips. It wasn't my mouth or my esophagus or anything. So I just went off. And later I heard that I'd had plastic surgery from somebody who saw me there and then went and spread it. So now I'm laughing over these things. But at the time I was crushed. I lost my entire support system. I lost all my friends. I had friends that I'd had their kids overseas and we shared kids back and forth and all kinds of things and helped each other out. I took her daughter after she had knee replacement, call up and have the child say, "Mom says she can't come to the phone. She doesn't want to talk to you because you're an apostate now." So just because I went to the Methodist church, I had a ton of people that were harassing the hell out of me or ignoring me and then throwing bombs at me all the time. It was crazy stuff. One day I got out of my car and the cousin of somebody who had a friend that went to our old church ran up to me and started telling me they couldn't believe I was an atheist now. Hey, Michelle, so I had to disabuse her of that notion in a hurry. This was 2 full hard years of this crap going on, and I cried almost every day. Every day I had an encounter with one of these people, because it kind of felt like I actually did a painting that disappeared during my shipping that pretty much summed up those 2 years. It was a bunch of white sheep on the top of the mountain. There's a fence at the bottom of the mountain, and the poor black sheep was outside. That's how I felt. I felt like I'd been taken outside that fence of protection, and they were all lobbing hand grenades. I do have one really close friend that I'm still really close with who said, "No, you're my friend regardless of where you're going to church." So she kept me sane. Shout out to Joni. She is one of my best friends. She's awesome. So at the end of that 2 years, I started becoming involved with NLQ with No Longer Quivering and Vicki Garrison. And I found a way to use what I had gone through to help other people and to get the stories out about all of us that have been told we were apostates and we were going to hell now. So that's one reason why when I started doing book reviews for NLQ, I started calling Handbaskets to Hell, because I was told that so many times that I actually started saying, well, my handbasket is being decorated. I got pillows, I got beautiful smelly candles. I've got snacks. So I'm ready. I am ready. So I've always just joked about that after that. I thought it was a good way. And the oh my God. I've got some tales about her one day, Celine. Her husband is basically tried to contact me over and over, and he tried to contact my husband to tell him to make me behave. When has that ever happened? So after I left and everything was said and done, about 2 to 3 years later, my old church imploded. It imploded to about 10 members from about, oh yeah, I had my sunscreen. It imploded from about 10 members, imploded down from about 300 members to 10 to 15. And so many people that had been super ugly to me when I left were suddenly turning up at the Methodist church. They didn't stay. Usually they'd stay for a month or so, sitting on the pew trying to get a little healing, and then they would look for somewhere else that fit more with their more conservative mindset. I love to give a realistic view of life on her comment section. I have a friend, she's a black girl. I love her. In school, we would always say to each other, the struggle. Ah, yes, the struggle. And against Lori, I could go on for days. Go on and tell you about Lori. Lori's a special kind of something or other. Lori wouldn't have been tolerated by the church. They would have told her, first of all, you're a woman and you're trying to teach. It doesn't fit in that authoritarian structure I was telling you earlier. That is God and Jesus, the husband, father, the wife, the children, down there. So you're not allowed to teach. And you're not allowed to have certain leadership roles, which I always thought was weird because women ran the church. I'm just going to tell you right now, women ran the church. A lot of the women in that church secretly ran their families and pretended how submissive they were behind, in front of everybody else. Whitewashed, I can't even say it. Whitewashed brave. I'm going to say it. Yeah, and you can visit different ones. Here it's a little bit more problematic because there's only 3 I know of, and I left one over the dog issue with them not honoring my disability requirements. I went to the other one that's close to the house, and it's all God's going to get you for that. It's all um, burn in hell type stuff. And I thought we left that behind with tent revivals, but apparently not. And there are people that want there. Did you want to be a pastor there? No, I did not want to be a pastor there. But I did explore that option when I went to the Methodist church because there was actually a pathway. And I did attend a lot of leadership training at the Methodist church to be able to do different things. So I did talk about it for a while. It was part of my story. But I finally decided I really didn't want to be a pastor because I didn't want to put up with everybody's BS. And I got to see our Methodist pastor, how much crap he had to deal with. And it was a lot. People with money trying to shut down the contemporary worship service saying, only our 11 o'clock crew is the right church. We're the only righteous ones. The rest of them are. So they are privileged. They're very privileged, Lori Alexander's thing. And that's the scary part about her, is that it's all privilege. Did she say she wanted to be a pastor? I don't know. I don't watch her. I see clips that Llama Girl, bless her heart, puts up. And that's it, because I refuse to give her the views. No views, no views, no views. You got to starve somebody off who is making money off you. So I do not give her views at all. So all these people showed up at our Methodist church, and it was good. I had an opportunity to actually minister to people who were super hurt. At that point, was a Stevens minister, which was basically lay people trained to take ministerial roles. So I did that for quite a while. I still have my Stevens ministry certificate somewhere around here. And it is legitimate training, very similar to what you undergo when you become a psychologist or a social worker. They teach you how to react to people, how to use questions to draw people out, things to say to diffuse the pain and anger of some. It was good training, and I'm glad I got it because I actually used it a fair amount at NLQ when people would contact me with what they'd been through. Huh, well, that is interesting. I had no idea. That is very interesting. I had no idea she ever had that ambition or anything else. It's my old church in Possum Creek. Women were not allowed to be elders. They weren't allowed to sit on the elders board. They weren't allowed to sit on the deacons board. They weren't allowed to sit on the finance team. They weren't allowed to do anything at all. And the Methodist Church, it was completely different. If you were a woman and you felt called to do these things, guess what? You were allowed. So that's basically what happened. So I got to be part of those people's journey out. And they all went to another church. Almost all of them landed at this other church. Then that pastor offended them. They all went somewhere else. I've seen them take down a couple of churches now. Some of the people I went to church with, they were stuck in the same old thing. Some of them recovered. The hardest one for me, the one that I struggled not to smack somebody, was when one of the kids on worship team with me, I shouldn't call him a kid. He was like 17, 18, 19 years old. His, I think so. Celine, I don't think she's ever had an orgasm. His mother started showing up, and his mother had been part of the gang that tried to run all of us who were divorced off. I've told the story before. I was married very briefly, college age, and it didn't last. I divorced him. It was not a good situation. There was some abuse and neglect and other stuff going on. Yeah, I think the Lilith story is interesting too. And it's interesting how the Bible has been interpreted and edited through the years too. That fascinates me. So this one woman, she showed up and she was walking with a cane. She was really beat up. She was part of the group that was harassing us. She also tried to make everybody in my old church wear head coverings. She was part of that group that said head coverings were righteous. So by the time I'd gotten to her, she had been through quite a few things that had broken her faith. And so instead of slapping her like I wanted to do or saying some very mean things, I just, hey, how you doing? And backed away. I didn't say or do much because I couldn't. I was so triggered by her mere presence. And this is with me knowing her son very well and playing music with him for forever. I mean, I played music with him at Possum Creek and then at the Methodist Church. So this was somebody I knew, and he knew me well because one of the things I did at Possum Creek was I was one of the two people running teen worship team, which was an experience. You It was a thankless task because a lot of times I would have to make a big sign and stick it on the pulpit where nobody in the congregation could see it. That said, smile, make eye contact, because they're up there like this, playing like funeral dirges, stuff like, blessed be his name. Lori is not joyfully unavailable Java man. Lori says that all you need to have a great sex life is 5 minutes in lube. The way she talks, sex is never pleasurable for women. And I know every time I would write an article pointing out that sex is pleasurable for everybody involved. And if it's not, you need to find out why. You need to go to a sex therapist. You need to maybe go to a psychologist, different things, different reasons. And maybe your husband needs to know what you like. And she would vote down everything. Oh, she hates butt stuff. No doubt about that. No butt stuff whatsoever. Hey, Ragged Hill. So she did not, she didn't like any of that. Lori only approved on man on top, get it over with quick, missionary position, sex with 5 minutes in lube. That's it. So Lori is her own unique thing. And she's kind of interesting because she's had a brain tumor. She's had several rounds with this brain tumor. And about 2 years ago, she announced it was back. And I quit covering her at all as a result. I never mentioned her again at NLQ because talking smack about somebody with a brain tumor felt like poking a slow badger with a sharp spoon, like it was something you just don't want to do. I asked in her comments section, does a woman have to be meek and quiet in the marriage bed? Oh, she will tell you that a higher sex drive in women is a lie. I think Virginia had laws about missionary positions. They did. Selena, I feel bad about the brain tumor part too. And I also feel bad about the sex and everything else with her because clearly she's not a happy camper. She's missing all the fun parts of sex. I mean, really, why do you have sex if you aren't going to have a good time, or at least have some, and all the submission stuff for sex? Having sex in marriage is good, but guess what? It has to be both partners. There has to be consent. There should usually be a lot of give and take. But in the kind of funky town that Lori Alexander lives in, there's none of that. There's just whip out the lube and do it whenever he requests it. Like Michelle Duggar says, but Michelle Duggar seems to be really into it. She's not saying 5 minutes in lube. I've noticed that about Michelle. She seems like she enjoys it every bit as much as Jim Bob. So now you know my weird thoughts on Lori Alexander, who I've barely spoke of. Lori has some pretty strange, hardcore, threatening fangirls, just as bad as Without a Box of Kleenex. So I try not to ever speak about Lori here as a result. And the brain tumor thing is just too bizarre. I listened to a lady who's now a widow, and she said her husband was meeker sexually than her. She talked about the struggle of Madonna, horror complex marriage. There's a lot of truth to that, Celine. And one of the things that went down with our old church, it was really bizarre, and it split part of the church, was some of the teachings that came out of Toronto were like, we need to be having the best sex ever, best sex ever. We need to be having sex so good that the entire world is envious of our sex lives. It's to say, what do you got there? Why are you got all this good stuff going on? Why are you grinning from ear to ear all the time? Why are you so youthful looking? Why are you this? Why are you that? And say, well, it's Jesus. Jesus is in our bedroom. I was on Claire's live stream this week, and they were talking about an article, I think, in one of the British tabloids, where a woman said that best sex ever was Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit in the bedroom with them while they were doing it. It's a little bizarre, but that was actually taught in my old church. Yeah, it is a juicy one. Yeah. And I'm going to start telling some of those crazy tales that I've told on Claire's live streams. I've had some things that are like R-rated that I don't say here that are really funny. Like, I'm going to tell you a real quick one. Last year, we had to leave the country because they suddenly decided they weren't going to renew our visas anymore without going out and coming back in. They closed the Nicaraguan border, so our only shot was to fly out and fly back in. And they'd already kicked out everybody's residency packages, so that wasn't even possible. So I was looking for cheap tickets, and I couldn't fly to DC. My daughter said, no, I'm in the middle of this move. I can't accommodate you. So I was looking around for tickets, saying, well, let's go somewhere else. We ended up picking New Orleans because the tickets to New Orleans were astronomically cheap, number one. Number two, I knew of a luxury hotel there that I'd stayed in the past and really enjoyed it. I got rooms there pretty cheap. So we went, and we didn't have much to do because many of my relatives in Louisiana would not see me because I wasn't vaccinated, and they weren't seeing anybody that wasn't vaccinated. And that was pretty fair, I thought, later. But at the time I was kind of mad. So I only saw about half my Louisiana relatives. And it was a pretty interesting time there. We did different stuff. The restaurants weren't open, so we were having to get takeaway. The restaurant and the good hotel was not open, so we couldn't even call up po' boys or shrimp etouffee. Um, One day we were noodling around and we were in mid city and we saw this big red building with a sign that advertised triple X rated films and other stuff. So we decided, what the heck? Let's go in there. Let's see what they got, just for the hell of it. Not that we're people that hang out in sex shops. No, not at all. But this is one of those times where we're kind of like, well, we don't have anything better to do. Let's do this. This is going to be weird. So we walked in this place. And sure enough, it was way weirder than anything I've seen on Bourbon Street. They had a theater in the back where they were continually running porn, or prawn, as you're forced to say here. And guys, maybe not in raincoats, but a lot of skeevy looking men going in and out. So I'm watching this and I'm giggling. They had the strangest implements I've ever seen. And I grew up in the New Orleans areas going into these places on Bourbon Street and giggling. So this was a whole new level of weird I had never seen. If you wanted to get a video of Japanese milkmaids getting spanked by guys dressed up like old-timey Soviet soldiers, they had it. That's how weird their video section was. I'm just looking at them giggling. And then at the end, I'm looking at all these appliances they have in this glass counter. And I no lie, the smallest one was maybe this big around in diameter. And I'm looking at that going, that would kind of sting a little bit, I would think. Well, I made some kind of smart ass remark, and I looked over at the guy running the place, who was a nice looking young black man. He looked over at me and said, white people be into the strangest shit on earth. I just busted out laughing because that was the kind of the pornography. Yes, pornography. So, Ginger Lee, there has been a lot of craziness this weekend. And for me, I'm just going to say this. Nancy, oh, you're working for a church. Oh, my goodness. So this weekend was pretty crazy. And I reacted badly. That's why I made mine, because I've had nothing but KJ stands attacking me left and right, sending me emails, popping up on my Twitter to insult me, popping up on tell me that how badly I suck. I might suck, but not for that. So anyway, there was a lot that went down this weekend. I wasn't involved in most of it. I did say something to some of the people who were calling others out and said, yeah, call them out. I mean, really, they did some things that are worth calling out, but that we all do. We're all sucky and hypocrites. And as EKC, People Suck says, we all suck sometimes. I popped a high fever on Saturday. And this is after being in the hospital last month for a bladder infection for 4 days. Then having to go back on antibiotics because it moved to my kidney after I was out. And I was still sick. 10 days antibiotics. Well, Saturday, I said, after I was all ranty on YouTube, I said, no, I don't really feel great. And usually that means I got bad asthma on the way if I'm getting all ranty and stupid and like, So I took my temp and it was 101. I was like, oh, holy cow, this is kidney again. So Saturday, I went to the doctor again, to the clinic where I go. And they're wonderful there. I've got nothing bad to say about them. And they tried to put in an IV to give me IV antibiotics because they consulted a urologist who I'm probably going to have to go see and have tests run. Oh, joy. But they couldn't get an IV in. They're healing now, but I had a ton of abscesses on this arm. Right now I got a ton of bruises and needle marks on this arm from the attempts to get the IV in this time, plus the old damage from the hospital. So it didn't go well. It did not go well with the IVs. So then they came up with giving me a shot, and I'm fine with that. Give me the shot once a day. I'm already starting to feel better. So clearly it was the right move. There's just various people that are taking after everybody. There's no real um the closest I've seen to recapping the drama this weekend was I just finished a live stream with JC, the Do Good Letters. She was not part of the drama, she was drama adjacent. And she's talking about the person that everybody is having all the problems with. Take a look at holistic medicines. Funny you mentioned that, Silver Goddess, because you know where I'm on my way to now? I'm on my way to the shop where they sell all the lovely supplements and things. Because I'm having a sinus infection at the same time. So the only thing that works in my sinus infection is 10,000 milligrams of garlic supplement every 4 hours, and it'll knock that thing out in like 3 days. So I'm going to go there and talk. 21 Studios, the guy is terrifying. No, I have not heard of that. I'll have to research that. I've not heard of that. The guy that I fought with the most with ringworms. Ringworms are not fun at all. I can't do oregano oil. I tried. I reacted. It was bad. I tried it. I had to. I had to send Cindy Kunzman my big bottle of oregano oil I bought for her to use because I know she. If you have a limited number of them, no allergies will happen. That would be nice. I would even put ringworm for that. Well, here's the thing, Brenda Lee. I look like an addict right now. If you look at my track marks in my arm, I look like an addict. And the funny thing is because of the situation, and they can't do, I'm a hard stick. I'm a real hard stick. And we have one couple really good spots over here, and even then they get blown out. So there's no way I could ever be an IV drug user unless I was like putting it between my toes and my ankle or my belly or wherever. Yeah, I'm not drinking tea. Ice cream I've had, so I need to not. And I have to find the balance to right, the body override the allergic reaction, attack the ringworms. Yeah, well, pain is like that too. If you have pain in one thing and then another thing starts, you don't feel the pain in the first thing. So I'm actually trying to take a month or so off from a lot of things so that I can heal because this hasn't been easy and I haven't exactly felt well. So there's that. And no IVs. I told them the next time they try to IV me, they can put me in the hospital and put a PICC line in because this has just gotten ridiculous. I had cancer when I was 15 and I have been left with a legacy of veins that roll, collapse. They're deep and small after that. And so many people I've talked to who've had chemotherapy and radiation have similar problems afterwards. So part of it is that my veins are just scarred to hell and it doesn't work. If I'm getting ready to go, but did a convention. Oh, yes, I know you're talking about now. The guy who runs 21 Studios is a guy that is a woman hating thing. He was involved with all those crazy guys that believe all women are evil. I've been finding signs for months. Feels like I'm only better when I'm on prednisone. Oh, yeah, that's a problem with prednisone. I can't even take it anymore. React now. So for me, it's the garlic oil. Garlic does it like that. So I'm getting ready to have to go into town during high season, which is miserable, and do that. We went out last night and went to one of the bars and watched bands play. And it was pretty awesome. I'll have to take a look at him. So here's the funny thing. I've said this before. We've got the guy who played Mike Ehrmantraut on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, lives here in the Tamarindo area. I see him out and about. It's an actor named Jonathan Banks. I see him all the time. I saw him last night at sunset at a beachside bar. And so far, I've controlled myself. I haven't run up and gone, "Hey, I really love Breaking Bad. Better Call Saul. Thanks." But my husband made the mistake of running and said, "You're Mike, aren't you? You're Mike. You're Mike." I said, "No, I haven't been told I look like him." So there's that. That's the craziest. Heart, liver, diabetes issues. I'm going to check him out. I don't have heart issues. I did have some heart shenanigans when my when my fever went to 104. Hey, Mandy. And apparently it'll do that. So there's that. But I normally don't have heart problems. I've been checked out for that a number of times. I'll check into that, Lucy, as long as it's not the keto diet, because I did have problems on that one with it making my um, cholesterol levels go from borderline, like they always are, to holy cow, your blood is basically Crisco right now. And I ended up having a stroke, a little minor TIA, but too much in one. This last one I had was a lot more serious, and they're still trying to figure out the why. Oh, Celine. Lori Alexander fully embraced them, and they fully embraced her because they see that she is like, this is going to sound like a hyperbole, and it is kind of hyperbolistic. She is kind of like one of those women that, not even one of those women, those men that in the concentration camps cooperated with the Nazis to win favor. I'm looking at her relationship with God that way. I think she feels like she has to police force the entire half of the population's behavior so she can win brownie points with God. I'm going to try that with oregano oil. Maybe I'll get a little tiny, tiny bottle. I have to be real careful with essential oils. If they're extracted with benzene, I can't take them. It makes me dreadfully ill. So I usually end up getting the really expensive, naturally derived ones, and I can handle those pretty well at all. And Costa Rica is a nation where you can get holistic medicine, you can get herbs, you can get oils, all of that thing quite easily. So that's what I'm about to do. I've been almost an hour. I need to go run get garlic because this is driving me way crazier than the kidney infection is now. So you guys have a wonderful day. Tomorrow I probably am going to talk about the guy who went through multiple surgeries here after he went swimming in the ocean with a surgical incision. That is never a good thing to do. So I'm going to talk about that in Costa Rica a little bit tomorrow because we've had some interesting times. We've done another border run. They did pick them. Sonder Commandos. Yes, that's exactly what she's like. She's a Sonder Commando in Christianity. So I'm determined to do what I can. I'm trying to eat right now. I'm trying to have yogurt with every meal because my gut bacteria is destroyed. Okay, you guys, love you all. Hope you have a really great afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are in this world. I will be back tomorrow with the crazy scrotal problems this guy had.